So good morning all of you. Today we'll be starting classification of magnetic materials. We'll be discussing how magnetic materials are classified. Okay. So magnetic materials first of all can be classified into linear and non-linear. Okay. Then under linear we have two types: dimagnetic materials and paramagnetic materials. Okay. Now I'll discuss one by one what is diamagnetic. I'll give some example also what is paramagnetic, what is ferromagnetic. Okay. Ferromagnetic comes under non-linears. As you can see here, linear, non-linear. Under linear, we have dimagnetic materials, paramagnetic materials. Under non-linear, we have ferromagnetic materials. Okay. Now, how to define them? What is diamagnetic and what is paramagnetic? First, I'll explain the concept. What is diamagnetic? Now, in a magnetic material, many magnetic dipoles will be there. Okay. In a material, many dipoles will be there. They will be in random motion. I'll draw here. See, suppose this is a magnetic material. So, in this magnetic material, many dipoles will be there. Dipoles means what? Small, north pole, south pole. Magnets will be there. These are called magnetic dipoles. Okay. So they are in random motion. These dipoles are spinning in random motion. Okay. So they're in random motion. Now, what is diamagnetic? Okay. Diamagnetic means if the dipole moment completely cancels each other, if the dipole moments, total dipole moment of the magnet completely cancels each other, that means it is zero, then we call it a perfect diamagnetic. Then you can call it a perfect diamagnetic material. Practically, the susceptibility is less than zero. That means susceptibility is negative, and relative permeability is less than one. That is the meaning of diamagnetic. For the material to be perfect diamagnetic, the net magnetic moment, okay, must be zero. So this is about diamagnetic. Now, what is non-magnetic? If susceptibility is zero, here susceptibility was negative, here it is zero. Susceptibility is zero or mu r equals to 1. Means relative permeability is 1. That means what? Free space, air. These are all examples of non-magnetic materials. In those cases, mu r is 1, right? Relative permeability is 1. So that is an example of non-magnetic materials. Now some examples of dimagnetic materials are copper, lead, bismuth. Okay. In fact, superconductors come under the category of perfect diamagnetic materials. Superconductors at absolute zero temperature. Superconductors at absolute zero temperature comes under the category of perfect diamagnetic material, because in superconductors there cannot be any magnetic field. Magnetic field should be zero. See, I told you all the dipole moments must completely cancel each other. That means what? If the dipole moments are completely cancelling each other, then there is no magnetic field because of this material. Okay, that is an example of perfect diamagnetic material. Now, what is paramagnetic material? Paramagnetic material is susceptibility is slightly positive and mu r is greater than 1. See, in this case, permeability or mu r is less than 1. But in this case, mu r is greater than 1. And susceptibility is slightly positive, slightly positive. Okay. So that is an example of paramagnetic material. Okay. I repeat once again. Diamagnetic material are those in which magnetic moment or total magnetic moment of the material is zero. That means all the dipole moments cancel out each other completely. Okay, that is called a diamagnetic material. That is example of perfect diamagnetic material in which total magnetic moment is zero. Magnetic dipoles cancel out each other. Superconductors at absolute zero temperature comes under this category because superconductors at absolute zero temperature does not have any magnetic field. Magnetic field is zero. That is the example of perfect diamagnetic material. Paramagnetic material still little in better condition. There will be some magnetic moment, some magnetic field will be there. Okay, these comes under linear magnetic materials, and under non-linear we have ferromagnetics. Okay, and what is the meaning of ferromagnetic material? In which susceptibility is very high, permeability is very high. Generally, like example I'll give you, core of the transformer, the core of the transformer is made up of ferromagnetic material. Ferromagnetic material is preferred for core of the transformer. Okay, you know transformer, right? Transformer is having some core, and that core carries the flux. If the susceptibility and permeability is high, the flux can easily flow through the core. Okay, so that's why ferromagnetic material is preferred in case of transformers, because we need proper circulation of flux, and more flux can accommodate also. So this is a ferromagnetic material. See, mu are much greater than 1. But I'll tell you one important thing, one important point here. Ferromagnetic material will also become linear after some point. Okay, it's not that it will always be non-linear. After the Curie point or Curie temperature, no need to know all these things now. Just I'm discussing you for extra information. After the Curie point, ferromagnetic material also behave as linear material. Okay. So this is the whole story about different types of magnetic materials. So our next topic is boundary conditions. Now, what do you understand by boundary conditions? Just recall in electrostatics also, I derived two equations for boundary conditions. If you remember, E1t equals to E2t and D2n minus D1n equals to rho s. Okay, two different medias were there of different permittivities. In those case, permittivity. Okay, in electrostatics we had taken two different medias having different permittivities, epsilon on epsilon 1. Okay, and what are the conditions that the electric field must satisfy at the boundary, that we had seen in those cases. But here it is different. Here you are talking in terms of magnetic field intensity or magnetic flux density. Here also we will have two media. One interface will be there, and we will have two medias having different permeabilities. Okay, in those case it was permittivities. In this case it will be permeability. Same thing. Okay, same concept here, but here we have magnetic field, there we had electric field. Now for boundary conditions also, we'll be using the Gauss law for magnetic fields. What is the Gauss law for electrostatic fields? Surface integration of d dot ds equals to rho v. Surface integration of d dot ds equals to rho v, correct? But in case of magnetostatics, we have b dot ds equal to 0. So we'll be using Gauss law for magnetic fields, b dot ds equal to 0, and Ampere's second law, H dot dl equals to I. Okay. So these two concepts will be using for boundary conditions in case of magnetic field. Okay. Now see, just recall, I had drawn this type of diagram before also in electrostatic fields. Correct. In that case, it was electric field here. In this case, it is magnetic field here. Otherwise, everything is same. Same concept again. We have an interface here. This is the boundary. And this side of the boundary, we have one magnetic field B2. This side of the boundary, we have one magnetic field B1. Okay. So suppose this is my interface or the boundary. Above it, I have one magnetic field B1. Below it, I have magnetic field B2. And above this boundary, this region is having a permeability of mu1. Below this boundary, the region is having a permeability of mu2. Okay, mu1, mu2. So two different medias are there. Two different mediums are there. And in both the mediums, the magnetic field is different. Okay, as you can see here, here it is B1, it is B2. Now just recall what I had taught in electrostatics. I resolved the magnetic field components into two components. One is the tangential component, one is the normal component. As you can see here, this is B1, this is your tangential component, this is your normal component. The angle between the normal and the B1 is theta 1. Okay, so this is B1T, this is B1N. Normal component, B1N means what? Normal component or the perpendicular component. B1T is what? The tangential component, which is tangent to the surface. Similarly, we have B2 here. Now again, B2 can be resolved into two components, B2T and B2N. Okay. Here the angle is theta 2. Okay. Now see. So for this case, we have magnetic flux density. So we'll be applying Gauss law for magnetostatics here. Okay. How to apply Gauss law? B dot ds equal to 0. Surface integration of B dot ds. Now, if you carefully notice here, we have two surfaces. This is the top surface. This is the bottom surface. Okay. Top surface, bottom surface. This surface and this surface we have. Both are having a area of delta S. Now, if you apply B dot ds equal to 0 to the surface, how to write the equation? Now, see here. Okay. So let us see this surface first. So from this surface, B1 is coming out. B1N is coming out. That means the normal component of the magnetic field B1 is coming out of this surface delta S. That means from the top surface, this surface. But from the bottom surface, it is going inwards. That means the normal component of the magnetic flux density is entering the surface. So the directions are opposite. So you can write like this: B1n into delta S, P dot ds, right? So B1n into delta S is for this surface, minus of B2n in delta S. Why minus? Because here it is leaving, here it is entering, so minus. So that's why we can write B1n equals to B2n. Okay. So basically, the magnetic flux densities of both the medias will be equal. In which case, the normal component, of the magnetic flux densities will be equal. Okay, that's the conclusion from this. B1n equals to B2n. Normal component will be equal. Still, we have not got any inference about the tangential components. Okay. Now, one more inference you can write like this. What is B1n? Mu1 into H1n. B2n is mu2 into H2n. So mu1n into H1n equals to mu2 into H2n. This also you can write. Now, next is relations between the magnetic field intensities. To get that, we'll be applying Ampere's rule, Ampere's second rule. Okay. How to develop a relation between the tangential components of the magnetic field intensity. Okay. So for that, we'll be applying Ampere's law. And as I said, to apply Ampere's law, first of all, we have to select an Amperian path. Okay. Now, what should be the Amperian path? See, if you carefully notice here, the cross signs are given here. That means what? Current is entering like this. Okay, current is entering the screen. So current is entering the screen means what? The magnetic field direction will be clockwise. Okay. See, the cross sign is given here. Cross sign means what? Current is entering the screen. So if current is entering from right hand rule, you can find out the direction of the magnetic field. Right hand thumb rule, right? So this is thumb. Thumb you point towards direction of the current. So this will be the magnetic field direction clockwise. So I have considered here an clockwise Amperian path. Can you see here? A, B, C, D. This is the path. Clockwise Amperian path I have considered. That's the first step. When you are applying Ampere's second rule, you have to consider Amperian path. Now you have to apply Ampere's second rule here. How to apply? Before that, you first resolve H1 and H2 into two components, like what we did here for magnetic fields. For magnetic flux density, whatever we did, we have to do for this case also. We have to resolve magnetic field intensity into two components, H1T and H2T, H1 and H2N. Okay, for H1, these are two components, H1T and H1N. For H2, H2T and H2N. So I resolved in two components. Now see here, the height is considered as delta H. Height is delta H, length is del W, or you can say this breadth as delta H, length as del W. This is rectangle, correct? So the length is del W, breadth is delta H. Now current density I have considered K. What is the current density here? Surface current density. That means current by length, current per unit length. Okay, surface current density. Now, how to write the equation? So H dot dl, this part is H dot dl. This part is what? H dot dl. And this is which part? This part is what? I enclosed. Now, why I have written here I enclosed as K into del W? See, I said K into perpendicular length we should take, correct? Refer to my lecture of infinite sheet of current, magnetic field due to infinite sheet of current. In that lecture, I discussed current enclosed is nothing but the surface current density into perpendicular length. I also explained in that lecture, you refer to that lecture, that the perpendicular components will cancel out each other. Okay, that means components along the z-axis will cancel out each other. That means here in this case, just a second. See here in this case, the components due to delta H will cancel out each other. Okay, the magnetic field due to delta H will cancel out each other. So we should not consider delta H for I enclosed. Are you getting my point? I'll show you that slide once again. It will better you understand the thing. See, I had explained you here the magnetic field on the z-axis due to this component will cancel out each other. Are you getting my? See here, due to this length, what is the breadth over here? A, right? So due to this component, the magnetic fields or magnetic field intensities will cancel out each other. Similarly, it will happen here also. Similarly, here also, the magnetic field intensities due to this part will cancel out each other. So we are not considering delta H. We are considering only del W. So we are writing current enclosed equals to I into, K into del W. Now, I enclosed equals to H dot dl. So H1T into del W. Why H1T into del W? See here. So this is H1T, correct? In the direction of del W. Correct? In the direction of del W. See, A to B direction and H1T direction is same. So we can write H1T into del W. H dot dl, dl means what? Small length. So del W is the length here. So H1T into del W because both the directions are same. A to B and H1T's direction is same. Okay. Now next we have plus H1N into delta H by 2. H1 into delta H by 2. See. So this is delta H, correct? And this much part is what? Delta H by 2. If total is delta H and if it is getting divided between the two regions, then what? This much part, half of the part is delta H by 2 and H1N and delta H by 2 direction is same. So you can write plus of H1N into delta H by 2. Okay. So plus 1 plus of H1N into delta H by 2 plus 2 H2N delta H by 2. Why? See, this is H2N, correct? Perpendicular is H2N. So H2N into delta H by 2, correct? See, direction, this direction and this H2N direction is same. So plus H2N into delta H by 2. Okay. Minus of H2T delta W. Minus why minus H2T delta W? Now you see here. See, H2T direction is this way. This is H2 direction. This is H to T direction, correct? H to T is in this way. But direction of C to D is opposite to that of H to T. Okay. This del W direction from C to D is opposite. You can see here. So that's why you have to write minus of H2 into del W. Similarly, you see it will be minus H2 and del H by 2 minus H1 and del H by 2. Okay. So ultimately you will get H1T minus H2T equals to K. Okay. H1T and H2T equals to K. So from this, from applying Gauss law for magnetostatics, we got this relation. Okay. This is the relation between the normal component of magnetic field intensity, and by applying Ampere's law, we got a relation between the tangential component of magnetic field intensities. So what can you observe here? Both the tangential and the normal component of magnetic field intensities are discontinuous. Okay. Here H1T is not equal to H2T. It is equal to the current density. So it is discontinuous. In the previous case also, see, in the previous case also here H1N is not equal to H2N. So they are discontinuous. Normal and the tangential components of magnetic field intensities are discontinuous. What is continuous? Only the magnetic flux density. That also the normal component of magnetic flux density is continuous. Okay. So this is that inference we got from the boundary conditions. So ultimately you can write this equation from this equation, because H1T equals is nothing but B1T by mu1 minus B2T by mu2. So that's all for today. We'll continue in the next lecture.